Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multi-family real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Dave Foster. Hey Dave, how you doing, man?
Barry, I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm glad to have you on. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation. And Dave's out in St. Pete, Florida, so not a bad place to live. How far are you from the beach? I didn't ask you that before. Are you pretty close to the beach?
Oh, yeah. Do you want it in steps or yards?
That close, yeah?
200 yards to the surf line,
Wow. Okay,
depending on the
perfect.
tide.
Yeah, perfect. Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, Dave. I'm really excited. We're going to talk obviously about the 1031 and, just a little bit about your career and everything that you've been up to. So, but before that, do you want to sort of give us an introduction into who you are and what you've been doing?
Yeah, well, some people kind of describe me as a serial real estate junkie. I never met a fix of real estate I didn't like. So I've spent 20 some years buying, selling, building, developing, just having fun because I love real estate. But what I love even more than real estate is not paying taxes. That's always been the most satisfying day of my life is the day I mail in the tax return. This is appropriate because it's tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Monday. The day I mail in, I put it in the mailbox and it doesn't include a check. That's when I've won. So taxes and I just don't get along. And about 20 some years ago, I discovered the 1031 exchange, which lets you sell investment real estate and buy investment real estate without paying tax in the middle. And I was hooked for life. So I started doing them for myself and doing them for others. And here we are 22 years later, still going at it.
Wow, incredible. So at that time when you were investing in real estate, when you found out the 1031, what was your background at that point?
Yeah, well, it's actually a pretty unique story. But it's also very similar to the path that so many people take. My wife and I were in fairly high profile careers and we had our first child. My gosh, life changes, right? All of a sudden you throw out your TV because you don't need it. You just sit there and look at this bundle of joy and go, he burped. Oh, it's so awesome. Yeah, it can be amazing. It doesn't matter what they do. But we realized that we only had time, a limited amount of time. And so what was going to be important? Jobs, careers, or time with our children. So we started to try to figure out a way to get off the corporate train so that we could invest the time with our kids. And part of that was for us a decision. We want to go live on a sailboat and raise our kids and join as water rats and sail the world. So because I was from Kansas, she was from Minnesota, and we lived in Denver, a lot of people just looked at us like, what the heck are you thinking? Yeah. But we decided to take the first steps. And the first step was find a way to generate income outside of our jobs to start to build that nest egg. So I did like so many of us have done. I bought a duplex. I fixed it up. I sold it. I made some money. Woohoo! I was all over it till I went to my accountant that winter and he said, boy, did you screw up bad? I said, what? He goes, you forgot. You have a silent partner and his name is Uncle Sam. And almost 40% of the money that I made on that deal, which was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, ended up going to the government in taxes. So that's when I called the big time out and said, no, we're going to find a better way. And that's when I discovered the 1031. So from that point forward, every opportunity we had, we used the 1031 exchange in different formats and ended up buying a 53-foot sailboat and sailing away and raising our kids for 10 years and never paying a penny in capital gains tax on real estate.
Wow, incredible. I got to ask you about the sailboat. Let's get to the 1031 in a second, but like the sailboat. So where did you buy it? Like, how did that work? What were the logistics? Like, where would you dock? Would you sail out to sea? Where did you go? Like, tell us a brief synopsis of that adventure.
We sailed all over Florida, both coasts, the Keys, the Everglades, and the Bahamas. And the way that we like to do it, we love community. And I was doing 1031s for people. So I generally needed pretty close access to, Wi-Fi and technology. So we would typically go places and take a dock slip and live there for a year or two and just move around. So we spent 3 years in Key West living on a dock. And then we would just take the boat out whenever we wanted to. We'd cast off the dock lines and go somewhere and hang out for a while. It
Wow,
was the greatest world.
that is
Loved every minute
amazing.
of it
And that's the power of real estate, right? That's the amazing thing about real estate.
because our real estate was working for us. Exactly. So I was somewhat tied because of the 1031 business. But even then, we could control that. So, man, if people are looking, there's a way, especially post COVID, right?
Yeah,
There's a way to make money and do it from wherever you're at.
yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. Well, for people who don't know, and hopefully most people don't, but if for they don't, can you break down what is a 1031 in basic terms, just so that everyone can understand what we're talking about?
Yeah. So, really, at its simplest, the 1031 is for people that own real estate, investment real estate, that is either highly appreciated or that they've owned long enough that it has been depreciated, which is that fake gift the IRS gives you. They pretend your real estate drops in value every year. So you get a tax write off. But when you sell the property, they want you to pay it back. So, I mean, that's just not a kind thing at all. But the 1031 allows you to sell that investment real estate, go buy different investment real estate, and not have to pay that tax that you normally would have on the sale. So, where it comes in really key is when you're wanting to change classes of real estate. Let's say you started out as a single family owner of single family rentals. You wanted to become a multifamily and do some things like you're doing, or you wanted to change from residential to commercial or to industrial or anything like that. The 1031 allows you to switch back and forth in between classes of real estate. For us, it was also location. We were able to sell investment real estate in Denver and go buy investment real estate in Connecticut and then in Florida. So we always had our portfolio near us as we were moving forward. And we did it all without paying tax. So the 1031 basically is that process that allows you to sell and buy without paying tax. And you're always trying to just put yourself into a little better position.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and it's an incredible tool, and it's an incredible tool if you use it right. Um, and you talked about different asset classes there. Is there any restrictions on what you can transfer into? What are some of the rules that people should be aware of and
Yeah.
considerations?
In terms of types of real estate, it's very, very broad, but the rest of the rules are very, very specific. But in terms of types of real estate, it's any kind of real estate that you use for productive investment use. And that can be traded for anything else. And it's United States real estate for United States real estate or the US Virgin Islands and Guam.
Mm.
So you got some options offshore if you want, but the sky's the limit as far as type of real estate and where it's located. Where it gets very specific and rigid is in the rest of the requirements. There's a couple timelines. You only have 45 days from the date of the closing of your sale to identify your potential replacement properties. And you have 180 days to close. No exceptions, no ifs, ands, or buts. You got to be done. You've got to use a qualified intermediary. That's someone who has to be in place prior to the closing of the sale. Is this the point where we turn the stage over to Barry?
Tell me how I learn that you need to not touch the funds, and all the funds need to go to the intermediary at closing. You cannot touch those funds. You cannot have access to those funds. Dave, do you want to tell them how I know, or I'll tell them how I know?
You tell him. Barry wrote the book on this one.
I learned the hard way. So I reached out. I had a property that I was selling a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember now, a while back. And I reached out to Dave, said, hey, Dave, I'm going to do a 1031, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, great. Yeah, this, that, the other. And I'm sure he sent me all the information. But me being me, I didn't quite read up on it or whatever. And just pushed forward and was doing other things and whatnot. So anyway, I sell my property and I reach out to Dave and said, hey, Dave, good news. I sold my property. I've got my money. And Dave goes, Wait, what? What? You got the money? Yeah, the sale went through. Everything went smooth. Everything was great. It's like, wait, tell me again. You have those funds in your accounts. He said, yeah. I said, yes. He said, it's done. It's finished. There's nothing you can do with that. The money has to go to the intermediary. You need to have everything set up with the title and everything in place so that money goes directly to that intermediary, right?
It was the
That's
saddest day of my life, Barry. There were tears in our eyes.
Tell me at least I'm not the only person that's ever done that.
Dude, I had one today.
Okay.
It still happens every month because the IRS does a horrible job of marketing how it's done. So it's very tough to find the information sometimes. And the QI, the very person that you need to guide you through this, many times you don't find till right at closing or afterwards. And it is so, yeah, literally today, there was another one and I just can't do anything. So we just know it for next time and march along. But yeah, the QI, qualified intermediary, very, very important part because the IRS does not want to see you touching that money. Title wise, there's some requirements that the title holder or the taxpayer has to be the same. So from sale to purchase. And again, these are the kinds of things that the QI guides you through. The reinvestment targets, though, are very, very specific. And a lot of people don't get them. So if you want to defer all tax, you have to purchase at least as much real estate as you sell. And you have to use all the cash to do that. So if you sell a property for $320,000 and there's say $20,000 in closing costs, your net sale is $300,000. So you've got to purchase at least that much real estate. Now, the cool thing is that can be more than one property. And that's a strategic tip. But you do have to purchase that much if you want to defer all tax. Now, let's say there was a $100,000 loan. So you have $200,000 in cash. You have to use all $200,000 in cash to purchase at least $300,000 in real estate, and you'll defer all tax. But what about this for a great hedge at this time in the market? What if you were to take, say, $150,000 and go buy a property for cash? You spend $150 for $200. You have a property now that's free and clear. So there's very little risk. If the market corrects, things go bad, whatever, all you've got to do is adjust the rent. You don't have to worry about a mortgage payment. Then you take the other $50,000 and go purchase another property for $200,000. Now you're getting the benefit of leverage and all of the extra ROI that comes with that. But you've got a property that has some leverage risk. So at the end of the day, if that happened, did you buy at least $300,000 in real estate? Yep. Did you use all $200 in cash? Yep. And now you're in a safer, better position than you were before you sold. And that's the kind of thing that the 1031 lets you do.
Yeah, very interesting. Oh, and with that proceeds, what those proceeds are, like you, that example, if you walk away with 200,000 and then you need to use that for, does that all need to go as a down payment? Can some of it be used for closing costs? Can some of it be used for something else? Do they have a sole purpose for that 200,000? Is this something that it only can be used for?
There are some closing costs that count, absolutely. Things specifically related to the purchase of the real estate. In general, though, costs of financing, like loan origination, buying down points, any kind of prorations, like taxes and that kind of thing, insurance, does not count for a couple of reasons. Number one, because they call finance costs the cost of obtaining financing. And that's just a little boo, shame on you, IRS. But okay, we get it. But the other thing is things like insurance and taxes are better treated as expenses. So you're actually better off to keep them away from the 1031 so you can claim them in the current year and get the extra tax write-off.
Yeah, very interesting. And you said something there. It's deferred, right? Just so people can understand as well. This isn't when you do a 1031, those tax implications don't go away. You're essentially deferring them, right? You're avoiding them for that point, but there's some nuances with that as well, right? With that deferral.
Because this is the point where we have to talk about the 4 Ds of
Okay.
1031 investing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Everybody needs to have their pen and paper ready. The first D is defer. The second D, defer. The third D, defer. And the fourth D is die.
Okay.
And here's why. Because when I say indefinitely, that truly means that. Because as long as you own a piece of property and you don't sell it, you never trigger a tax. So you could do a cash out refinance. That's not a taxable event. That's a beautiful way to get money without having to pay tax. But anytime you sell a property, if it's the right time, another great tip on when to sell. What if you've got a property that's say 10 to 20 years old and it hasn't had much done over the last period of time? You've got a bunch of capital expense items like a roof, air conditioning systems, water heaters that could be ready to go bad. If one of those goes bad, that can take a year or 2 or 3 of your net income like that. So you can use the 1031 to set to go from a property with capital expense looming to maybe a new construction property where you're not going to have to worry about that for another 10 years. That kind of thing. But as long as you sell and do the 1031 exchange, you'll never pay the tax. Now, anytime you sell the property and buy another property, what if you wanted to retire in it? The IRS says that you must purchase investment real estate, but you are not required to leave an investment forever. So one great later strategy that our clients will do is they will hold their new property they'll buy in Apollo Beach, something really nice. They'll put it in a vacation rental pool. And then in a couple of years, when they're ready to retire, they move into it. They still own it, so there's no tax triggered. And as long as they continue to own it, the tax stays deferred. Now, if they live in it long enough and then sell it and don't do a 1031, they will be able to get a proration of that tax-free from the primary residence exclusion. So I have a guy in St. Pete Beach who's a realtor who has 3 identical condos on the same floor of a beachfront building. His retirement plan is he's going to move into the first one. He's going to sell his primary residence. Now, that money's tax-free. He moves into his rental property. It all stays tax deferred. When it's time to redecorate, he's just going to move into the second one and he'll sell that one. Now, when he sells it, he's only going to get to take a proration of the gain tax-free between the period he used as a rental and the period he lived in it. But he's still going to get some money tax-free while he lives in his next rental. Where's he going to move? To the next one. The guy's got 25 years of living all set up, and he's going to end up, because the proration, if he lives in it, say 4, rents it for 1, he's going to get 80% of the gain tax-free. What a retirement plan. Now, here's the last D. You got to be careful with this one. Die. Under current law, when you pass away owning real estate, your heirs get that real estate as if they paid market value on the day you died, which means the gain and the tax go away for your heirs when you die. So you truly can defer, and then die and it goes all away. Now, be careful, because I speak from personal experience. As soon as my oldest child heard about this, he changed his college major to medical technology. And I think he's looking at how to shut equipment off.
Has he been trying to give you some funny food?
I put a new lock on my bedroom door, yes.
So you can get access to those funds. Yeah, that's great. But it's such a fantastic tool, right? And it's just understanding the nuances of this, right? Like you said, with that gentleman who has 3 of these condos, he's going to move in one, and it's just understanding the tax laws and how to sort of get around it, right, and avoid taxes, right? Because taxes is without doubt the biggest expense that we all incur, right? And it's done the right way, you can really limit that. And real estate is one of the best tools there is out there, undoubtedly, to kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's a lot like golf and sailing. It's very easy to learn how to play golf. It's very easy to learn how to sail. It's incredibly difficult to be a great golfer. It's incredibly difficult to be a great sailor. So the rules of 1031 are pretty easy to grab. It's all of, like you say, the nuance and the strategy and creating that strategy with enough runway to execute where you'll find your greatest benefit, which is why it took us 10 years. But in 10 years, we moved a portfolio to Florida and had enough tax-free dollars that's what bought the boat.
Nice. Wow. Okay. Well, that's right there, right? Avoid paying as much tax as you can, and you can buy yourself a boat, right? That's a great lesson for anyone out there. I'm going back to some of the rules and regulations with this. The 45 days to identify a property, right? Maybe talk a little bit more about that, because there's more to it than that, right? I believe it's you can only identify 3 maximum. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to get into some deep weeds here. So you
Okay.
just have to understand that this is an entire process
Mm-hmm.
that the IRS had to structure in 1996. So it's been part of the code for 100 years, but the IRS lost a lawsuit. Now, anytime the IRS loses a lawsuit, they're a little ticked. So they're not going to make it easy. So one of the things they hated the most was the fact that the guy Starker that won the lawsuit took forever to make this happen. And they said, fine, we'll let you do it, but we're going to constrain this. So here's the deal. From the day you close your sale, by the end of day 45, you've got to have identified your potential replacements. Once day 45 passes, you can't change the list anymore. But hey, by the way, because we don't want you to just bring in the LA County phone book and drop it on your QI's desk, the only way you can keep your properties unlimited in value is if you name 3 or fewer. If you want to name 4 or more properties, that's going to get more complicated for us. So we're going to restrict you and say you can only do that if the total value of all those 4 properties or more is less than 200% of what you sold. So they're kind of creating a funnel that you can see where they want to control the amount of information they have to manage. But a general rule of thumb for the people out there listening that are wanting to start getting their heads around this, if you're wanting to buy a similar sized asset, or if you're wanting to buy a much larger asset, like go from a single family home to an apartment complex, 3 properties, keep it to that, you'll be fine. If you're wanting to sell a big asset and purchase a large number of small properties, that's when you're going to want to name more than 4.
Interesting. Yeah, it's all very important to know, because obviously the IRS don't mess around, right? You get it wrong, right? There isn't a second, there isn't a
They
mulligan,
don't
right? There
mess
isn't.
around.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions? I'm sure you've worked with a lot of people, because that can be intimidating, right? You only have 45 days to identify 3, and then you have to close on one of those 3 that you can't close on anything other than one of those 3.
Right.
Do you have any help for people who might, because that's kind of scary to a lot of people.
Well, I mean, think about it from where you're living right now. How long are properties staying on the market?
5
A
minutes?
day?
Yeah, not even sometimes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a poison pill with the 1031 exchange that you just have to understand. And that is that the best time to sell a property and start an exchange is the absolute worst time to find a new property and complete an exchange, a seller's market. So, but you have to accept that, because remember why you're selling? You're making a lot of money. So you just aren't always going to be able to sell high and go buy low, because there's a lot of other people doing it too. So, but the converse of that is the exact opposite. The worst time to try to sell is the best time to try and buy. So how do you manage between those two? Understand where you're at in the process. So like if I was looking in the Vegas market right now, I would do everything I could to get my new properties under contract before I even listed my old property for sale. Now, because you can do that, all that has to happen is you can't close your new property till after you close your sale. Now, people argue with me, but Dave, no one's going to accept that contract. Okay, fair enough. Because sellers just don't want to, you know, they can deal with anybody they want. But don't forget, you're also a seller. So what if you sold your property contingent upon a large amount of released earnest money and a flexible closing date to let you go take that earnest money and your contract and go get your new property under contract? You got leverage to do that, don't you?
Yeah.
Because you're the seller. And I guarantee you, any one of those, what are we're calling it now? It's the Calexit, the California exit out of California, right? All the Calexit people would kill to be able to get your property under contract now and not have to close on it for 90 days. Because if it's under contract, their purchase price is guaranteed. What's the property going to be worth in 90 days? Chances are more. So, will you find people willing to do that for you? Absolutely. So that's what I try to challenge people to do is let's think creatively, take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Sellers aren't going to cooperate with you. Fine. Let's go put our seller hat on and make those lousy buyers cooperate with us.
Yeah, and then something obviously I don't have any experience of, but you can talk to more is the reverse 1031. Can you talk a little bit about that to how that works and what that kind of looks like and in what situation that can?
And that can absolutely be a great choice in the right situation. So the thing you have to understand about a reverse exchange is it doesn't change the statutory nature of the process. Your 1031 exchange, you still have to close the sale of your old property before you can take title to your new property. That never changes. But what makes it look like it changes is that in a reverse exchange, and by the way, these are again under a very, very rigid, specific set of rules from the IRS. So it's not anything flaky, but it's something very detailed that you have to do. So before, instead of you taking title to the new property, your QI forms an entity and takes title to the new property. So now it's under your control, but you don't own it yet. So you can then go about selling your old property, and then you're going to use those proceeds to buy your new property. What are you going to buy? Look, there's this beautiful property right here, and I'll bet those people would sell it to me. Yes, we would, because that's why we've been holding it. So it can be a very elegant. The problem with reverse exchanges is usually the cost. They add $6,000 to $10,000 to the price of a regular exchange because of the level of complexity. So, but as prices go up, it starts to become maybe a little more user friendly in terms of that. The other big issue is financing, because it takes a special kind of financing that's not just available by every broker. So they're not going to advertise it. So, but private financing, portfolio financing, those types of things, and a reverse exchange can work very well for you. By the way, the greatest advantage to that is that while we own that property, you're making the money off of it. While you own your old property, you're making the money off of it. So there's this lovely period of time where you're making the money off both properties. And usually that by itself will pay the cost of the reverse exchange.
Oh, yeah. And it's what I like the idea of reverse one. It takes that stress of trying to find that next property out of it, right? It's like you have it already, and then you just sell yours, and it's boom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now there is another strategy, and this just fits into the kind of the umbrella. So if you wanted to buy several smaller properties, that becomes an aerobic exercise, doesn't it? Because you're having tough time finding them. But what if you bought one property and put all your cash into that? So that then after you own that, you simply do a cash out refinance and use the cash from the refinance to go buy other new properties.
Mm.
By doing it that way, you've started to minimize your stress under the 45-day deadline, but you still got to sell the property and do a good 1031 exchange. And now you're shopping for properties at your leisure. And we actually do have a lot of people right now that are doing exactly that. They're doing the 1031 exchange into a property they want to hold. They're doing a cash out refinance because the interest rates are stupid low. And then they're just sitting and waiting. And when the market corrects, if it corrects, they've got cash and they'll come and buy it.
Yeah, that's smart. Because also with that kind of strategy as well, it gives you that freedom of, so you buy a property that you like, but it's probably maybe a lot less value than you put the proceeds of the 1031 into that, and then you're able to cash out refinance. Then you have all the time in the world. When you cash out refinance, you can take years if you want to buy the next property. You're not under the 1031 gun, not under that rush of trying to identify 3 properties in 45 days and then trying to close from there. So yeah, that's an interesting strategy. That's kind of cool. Well, Dave, this has been really cool. Is there anything I should have asked you? Anything you'd want to share? Anything that we kind of missed on that we should maybe touch on more about the 1031?
We covered a lot of ground in a few minutes, didn't we?
You did. I'm not taking any credit, but that was all you. As much as I would like to take credit, that was all you. You did amazing. Yeah.
I think probably the 2 places where I see people fail.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, don't wait until you're ready to sell to get your QI involved. Mm-hmm. They're critical for helping you find those little hidden gems of how to proceed that will save you time and effort and make it more efficient. So go find your QI sooner rather than later. The second place where I see people fail is by selling and not knowing where they want to go and what they want to buy before they sell. 45 days isn't long. And if you're trying to shop all over the country for a vacation rental or a commercial building or a duplex or an I don't know what, and you don't have a clue, you're going to be like a deer in headlights. You will not be able to move and you won't get your exchange done. So you just got to be so narrowly focused so that you're already well on your way to knowing what a good deal is when you see it. And then you can react quickly.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's about preparation, right? You just don't want to land in something like this and trying to figure it out afterwards, because that'll get messy. So, but yeah, hey Dave, thanks for explaining it. Well, 1031 is such a powerful tool. I love it. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, this is the part where I incorporate some wrestling-related real estate questions. And the first question is, what would your wrestling name be?
And I want to thank you for at least giving me a 2-minute head start on this. But I love the question. And it came to my mind immediately. I would be called the Smiling Assassin.
Okay.
Because I have a unique ability, no matter how much crap is flying in the wind, to keep smiling. So don't judge the situation by my smile.
Just because you're smiling doesn't mean everything is all good, I guess is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Well, every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in your business or in real estate?
My special move is teamwork. I mean, I'm a tag teamer. That was the greatest lesson I learned early in my life, was by going it alone, I may go fast, but I don't go far. When I've got people on the ropes, I'm ready to tag them in. They take over and they do far more than I can. So wrestling, real estate, marriage, it's a team sport, baby. And you tag them and bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You go so much further when you have other people on your team and you work with other people. That's brilliant. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your real estate / business?
Okay, I saw this just last week, actually. I was looking at some Excel spreadsheets. That's another thing. When you're a real estate junkie, you don't just use Excel spreadsheets, you save them. What a dork I am. I found some Excel spreadsheets that just had the word in the title, insolvency, from 2006. And I looked at the number of zeros that we lost in a week and went, oh, that was not a good day, was it? But I'm here to tell you, although that was a massive body slam, the second million is much easier to make. You already know how to do it. You just got to go do it again and then tag someone in to protect your backside.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sorry that happened, but like you said, the lesson you learn and the knowledge that you gain to come back even bigger and stronger is always a good lesson.
Most of America suffered that one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't get credit in the film The Big Short, darn it.
Oh.
We all should get our names in that.
So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it?
You're jumping off the rope or off the cliff?
Either.
Oh, absolutely. I do remember to this day, it was the day I bought the boat.
Mm.
Because up until that time, you would not believe how many people thought we were crazy. They still do, but parents, friends, family, what are you thinking to do? We're going to go buy a boat and sail off. Don't you know there's pirates out there? The Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, people would, even 5 years later, people would say, Dave, are you still living in a boat? And I'd say, dude, yeah. You mean you're still living in a house? But it was that day. And I remembered as clear as it could be the words of Mark Twain, who said 20 years from now, the things that haunt you will not be the things that you did. They will be the things you didn't do. And he actually ends that quote with a sailing metaphor. So cast off the dock lines, leave the dock, and go find the wind.
Wow, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that quote. I've heard part of it. I've actually heard the last part of it, but that's brilliant. And it's true, right? It's like the things that you wish you'd have done are going to be stronger when you're older, right? And it's going to be that you don't want to have that regret, essentially, right? And you have that power. We all have that power now to do things and to take action and to move forward and to live on a boat or travel the world or do whatever you want, right? We all have that option, and real estate is a great tool to help that with it. And then alongside that, if you want to utilize if you can utilize the 1031, even better, right? So, man, this has been a fun conversation. I appreciate you taking the time, Dave. You're a fun guy to talk to, but also a great topic and a great lesson for a lot of people, hopefully, who might not have been aware or might not have understood the nuances. So I appreciate you taking the time to explain all that. But before we go, if someone is looking for a great intermediary to do a 1031, where on earth could they find one of these people?
I've got an entire portal set up just for you guys. If you go visit the 1031investor.com, we've created a whole YouTube channel of tips and tricks and calculators and everything imaginable. And you'll find me right there, www.the1031investor.com. Love to help you out.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day there in St. Pete. I'm jealous, man. I wish I was up there with you.
Sounds good, Barry. Thanks for having me.